All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to be discussing technology trends and navigating the digital evolution that's upon us in the AEC industry. I'm Ed Akins. I'm the director of AEC Strategy here at cove.tool, and I'm joined with Daniel Chopson here. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Daniel Chopson, CTO, co-founder here at cove.tool, working on all things software and technology related here at our firm.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, leading the charge as we are engaged in what technology is bringing to the AEC. And so today we just want to share a conversation around transformation that's definitely sweeping the AEC industry, the role of AI in that change, which has been a very hot topic for a while now. And I think people are beginning to understand it more. And so we want to do what we want to do today is kind of cut through some of that clutter, some of that heat on the topic, and just slow down for a minute and think about how strategically we could consider these things in the AEC. How is technology shaping workflows? How is it modifying practice, especially architectural practice, for delivery of projects? And then you as an audience, hopefully you'll be gaining some insight into how your firm can harness those trends, stay ahead of the game, or be considering ways in which your practice could transform to be much different on the other side of the engagement of technology in the industry. Um, Wanted to remind everyone you can post your questions in chat. We have someone fielding those and populating them for us. So as we go, just make sure to put your questions out there and we'll respond to those at the end. Daniel, anything you want to share as we kick this off in terms of what you've seen, what you've been working on in the Cove tool space as we deliver consultancy and insights on projects to our clients.
Yeah, definitely. So, I think what we've seen the most is sort of this transition from, traditional SaaS software tools that sort of follow a very prescriptive path of you need these inputs, you get these outputs.
Yeah,
We have these traditional kind of constraints around what we can visualize and what we can sort of uh, do with the software, and so we're sort of transitioning from that towards what we would call our VAS model, so value as a service, and really, what is the end goal for your firm, right? Like, you need results, you need answers, and so how can we provide those to you the most efficiently? And so where we've seen a lot of efficiencies is sort of leveraging the newer tools like OpenAI. For example, our Vitros AI tool,
mhm,
which lets you sort of get quick and easy studies around zoning, climate, energy, and cost. And so those tools have proven valuable in that we can leverage AI to sort of parse through a lot of unstructured text and then give a very concise answer. On the flip side, we've been leveraging it within our help center and sort of
yeah,
giving it a little bit more interactivity there around answering questions that you may have based on sort of our body and corpus of knowledge.
beautiful. Yeah, when Daniel mentions, just for our audience, when Daniel mentions unstructured text, your mind should immediately go to, let's say, the zoning guidelines across the country. If you practice outside of your own state, which you're most likely familiar with, and practice in other locales and other jurisdictions, you know that the zoning code is a different way of organizing data in every platform. And I've been so impressed by your team, Daniel, basically filtering through that data and then getting that out as a free service within our Vitros AI. Um, we also have energy and other sustainability consulting included in there as reports that you can get. And we've recently heard that actually some academic settings have included this in their studio teaching. They've basically said, okay, we're just going to use Vitros to do initial studies for site, initial studies for passive design related to sustainability, and just general guidance for the energy that a project that we're proposing in a studio is going to be using, so that you at least have some goals and metrics that you're seeing, which before were very much veiled or could only be uncovered through really, complicated detail analysis. And now you can get it in within a few minutes, you've got a report and you're sitting there ahead of the game to approach design. So I think that's really empowering. And then firms also have been utilizing it uh, in terms of just initial understanding, let's say pre-design, jumping into Vitros to get an idea of the zoning in a location that they might not have worked in before, or to get an idea of the energy and climate needs in a location. So it's fascinating to see that from our own personal work, the work coming through the office, and then as it digs deeper into consulting and deeper use of technology within projects. And one thing I wanted to mention, we've got this QR code up here, yeah, up here, and see some folks have been scanning it. Please do. This is the Deltec 45th annual uh, report. It's their annual Deltec Clarity report that came out. It's based on 2023 data, where roughly, I think, 650 A&E firms in the U.S. and Canada were surveyed for their sentiment, their feedback in terms of how technology is shaping our industry. So several of the things that we'll share today are going to be based on that. This isn't only a talk about what we're up to at cove.tool, but also how we think these technology trends are shaping the market that we're in and that we're engaged with helping. One of the facts, I'll just pitch a few facts out here. 62% of the firms in that survey, the Deltec survey, expect AIA to improve their operations. So that's a high level of expectation across over 650 A&E firms, thinking that AI is going to improve their operations. Now, do you think all of them know exactly how that's going to happen? What do you think, Daniel? How are they going? Do you think they know how they're going to integrate AI?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of unknowns there, to be quite honest. Even at the beginning of this year, we really weren't sure how we were going to leverage AI, and so I think there's a lot of learning, a lot of discovery, and the landscape is changing almost weekly at this
Yeah,
point. If you follow OpenAI and sort of the things they're releasing, or other tools as well. I'm familiar with a lot of the software development type tools as well.
mm,
But I think one thing that is important to keep in mind is just focusing in on, like, what are you trying to solve for, right? Like,
great point.
you can't use AI for everything. You can use it's good at certain things. There's a lot of flashy new things out there around generative AI and visualization, but
Yeah,
at the end of the day, it's really good at providing answers from a body of knowledge, and so that's sort of where we've focused in. But yeah, it is. There are a lot of unknowns, and I think a lot of folks are just unsure where to even start. And so I hope we can provide a little bit of guidance there today.
right. Yeah. One of the other data points that was provided in that study is 29% of firms expect they're going to lose market share if they don't go through some digital transformation in the next, let's say, like 3 to 5 years, I think is what they were looking at. Um, so that's fairly much a near term. If you look at the pace of project delivery, how long a project is on the boards and then delivered for construction, and then CA oversight, uh, knowing that the potential of market share loss is existing and that fear is there. One thing that I could offer is that in some of the sessions I've seen and conferences I've been to, uh, architects are asking, what could technology do for me? And not the next employee, not like the mentor sitting next to them. It's like, what can the technology do for me now? But not through, let's say, a learned experience or a new tool being learned, but instead through AI and automated feedback loops, like more rapid feedback. And I think within that, the where it really hit home for me at the Aspire conference in Asheville that I just went to, um, again, really thinking about that community and the problems they're going through right now with the storm. But but there was a discussion point. It was led by Akil Hamant from HKS, where he was talking about AI, and he asked the group to basically think about what in their workflow they would enjoy getting rid of or having automated and have technology answer. I wrote down a few of them, so I'm just going to read them here. One was a go no go on project pursuits, where the technology could actually measure risk, staffing, and alignment within their firm, uh, and also maybe recommend technologies to assist. So using technology to recommend technology that could assist them, which was fascinating. Um, Doing plumbing counts for a project, and actually deciphering some of the code and use cases within interpreting codes for a project, building codes themselves, basically making sure that, or using technology to kind of look at the high points in building codes and codes in general, like a circular search, because we all know as an architect, you do your code research and you know how the cross referencing of data and there are multiple answers in different locations in the codes. Basically, that circular reference, because there might be two answers or a different interpretation with the jurisdiction, highlighting those so you're aware of them and know them ahead of time. Now, there's no tool out there that does that yet, but these are the spaces where I think the AEC needs to be thinking and looking for those items of their workflow that they would enjoy having technology take off their plate. So, have you heard the same thing, or are you thinking the same thing in the software space and in our product space as well, Daniel?
Yeah, definitely. I do think that there is a need for, and this is kind of referencing back to the unstructured data before, but there really is a large body of knowledge, whether it be zoning, building codes, and other types of codes, that's for the most part, kind of untouched in terms of technology sort of enabling you to find those answers. And
Yeah.
while there may be tools out there that can perhaps dig through and find a specific answer in a specific section, what you were referring to is really the key problem is, how do you handle, let's say in the context of zoning an overlay district, right?
Hmm.
Like, or the answer to how many parking spaces can I have, maybe spread across multiple sections,
Hmm.
not just the one titled parking. And so a
Right.
basic search or a basic query of that document may not give you the correct answer. So sort of leveraging AI to provide these comprehensive answers is really key.
Hmm.
I do think as well, automating in the software space, kind of switching gears from AEC for just a second.
Yeah.
In the software space, one of our rules of thumb has always been, even before AI, if you repeat the same thing three or more times, it's probably a good time to automate, right? And so, kind of looking for those things which are tedious tasks as part of your day that perhaps are very well defined types of problems,
Hmm.
and then seeing what tools you can leverage to solve that, whether it be AI or something else. I think that's key, because as I assume as design professionals, you really want to be focused on you know the sort of stuff that requires your skills and your expertise, not the repetitive day to day kind of things.
Right.
And so that's sort of what we've been seeing in the software space.
Nice. That makes a lot of sense. The so does that echo? I mean, to me, there's a direct relationship to modeling, to the software space, and the virtual world where you're representing something real. So when we go into building performance, we have to represent something that will be real. We are trying to get the best information we can to inform our design decisions, and we need rapid feedback loops. And technology has definitely helped with that. Um, BIM has allowed us to, engage in data as we draw. So the lines have so much more meaning. Lines are no longer lines. Lines are components of a model, and that model can give us feedback loops when done correctly. Um, this all gets back to this idea of garbage in, garbage out, or if you want to think about it positively, it's great data in, great data out. Uh, what are your thoughts on that as you've approached software, and even in the realm of let's say creating software and code? How do y'all approach that, and might there be lessons learned for the AEC related to your approach to technology?
Yeah, that's a great point. I do think that data and sort of the tools that leverage that data are only as good as the data itself, right? So if you are working with an incorrect BIM model, or
Mhm.
something that has, let's say in the case of Revit, right? Like
Yeah,
the incorrect family is assigned to an interior wall, and it's actually listed as an exterior wall. So that data is going to then carry through to every other tool that you have. And
yeah,
so I think that, sort of looking at ways to improve those processes, before you feed it into the later steps, will sort of reduce those feedback loops. Maybe a more specific example in the software world we oftentimes work with large data sets, for example, assemblies, right? Like
Hmm.
we've imported many different assemblies from many manufacturers.
Yep.
We very rarely, if ever, would just take something straight from the source and sort of import it and use it in our software tool.
Right.
We have scripts and analysis that we've written to sort of say, does it meet the basic checks? Does it have all these required fields? Do the values make sense? Are we handling unit conversions correctly?
Mm.
And so that's kind of the some of the pre-flight checks that we do on some of the data that comes into our tool, and that sort of carries on down the line for the accuracy of the simulations and things like that. But I
Mm.
think stepping back even a little bit more, in the AEC there is a lot of disparate sources of information, right? So
Hmm.
you might have your BIM model, you might have a project management software, you might have an energy simulation tool, and sort of making sure that those stay connected and up to date is a big challenge. So I think having either someone familiar with sort of those tools and the APIs that they provide. So
Hmm.
kind of speaking in tech terms, what are sort of the interfaces between those tools, and how might you leverage automation to uh, take something from one step to the next, so that those different pieces stay connected, and you aren't dealing with emails or PDFs to try and stitch things together. So, obviously here at cove.tool, that's been our focus for the last several years, is really connecting the different parts of the pipeline and making sure
Right.
data is not lost. I think that is probably one of the biggest inefficiencies, is data moving from step to step, right?
True.
Um,
True. Yeah. And you mentioned pre-flight, makes me think of post-flight. Also, kind of the beginning and end, the information going in, information coming out. One thing that's resonated in any conversation I've had in this space is the importance of the human in the loop. And so, as you're getting these feedback loops, verification of data, reliance on industry knowledge, reliance on the mentor sitting next to you, maybe in the firm, is still critical. um, and seeing technology not as a replacement of those individuals or the replacement of a whole research team like we have at cove.tool, thankfully. um, not replacing that, but instead of putting that human in the loop to make sure that the data that's transferred both in and the data that is moving through the system and then out is validated, it is reviewed, and that there's a clear discussion at the point of collecting data and getting it in, and there is a process for it. And then when it is delivered, that it meets the criteria set initially for why it is even going through the technology in the first place, right? That's so critical.
and I think that that's kind of the key piece here, is that, you know, whether it be data, whether it is the output that AI is generating for us, it's only as good as, the humans that are using it, right? And
Mhm.
so I think of Chat GPT. You can give it many different types of prompts, and it can go off in a certain direction, and it
Mhm.
might be completely incorrect. So it's really important to sort of train people on, this is, you're essentially interacting with a human that sort of has all the knowledge in the world, but you've got to guide them a little bit. You've got to give them a little bit of context. And so,
Yeah.
very specific example in the case of Chat GPT, you can actually define sort of a profile or a persona that you are, and sort of give it some guidance around the types of answers you want. And so I think just getting a little bit more knowledge out there and training on how to leverage these tools
Mhm.
in the right way is really important, because at the end of the day, it is important to have that those sort of guardrails on what you're
Yeah.
answering in those tools.
Yeah. And the Deltec survey even highlighted it's like close to 65, maybe more, 65% or so of firms struggle with figuring out where to apply emerging technologies. So they get the technology in, they're not sure where to apply it. So I think it's not only inside of your firm having someone who can understand the technology and apply it correctly, but also the supplier of the technology having a team there to support you and help you apply it in the right location. Um, I think what we've found that resonates the most is to think about your design phases. When we do needs analysis with our clients, We look at their design phases, the pre-project, pre-design space, the schematic design space. What might you need based on the client need? What might you need to know early that's going to add to efficiencies, that's going to allow you to track specific data through project development all the way to CDs and CA so that you know basically you're on track, and measuring the right thing. So I think you mentioned this earlier. It's not important to measure everything or to take on everything. It's just like, pick your battle, pick your goal, pick the specific data that will help you to meet those goals and follow it through the trajectory of a typical workflow process. Test it through that process and also test your technology partners through that process. Can they provide you with EUI at schematics, at design development? And then as you get into CD, is it continuing to ring true as you submit ComCheck, as you submit for compliance, at that point of permitting and building? And then do post occupancy. Once you've got that building built, it's been operating for a year plus, go back and look at the data. Have a good relationship with that client where you can go back and validate the things that you were thinking were going to happen are happening or not. And then if they're not, figure out if it's operations being askew, maybe some assumptions weren't, exact in terms of how things were built. And we all know there's variation on the job site that occurs once we get into the construction process. But I think that's really important. It's like this idea of tracking the data and also just knowing there's a handoff at all those phases. What is it that you want to hold on to and make sure you have a tight control of? And how can technology help you through that? I think it's extremely important, for your day to day operations. Um, and again, keeping that human in the loop. So technology is not going to be, I mean, there are areas where there's going to be some replacement of tasks. But if you think ahead and you're ahead of this in a 3 to 5 year planning process right now, and you're thinking about how it's going to modify your practice, I think you can get ahead of it and maybe even change some job titles or create new job titles that can support this transition in the industry. I think it's really important. Um, I mean, close to 50% in the Dell Tech study, once you download this thing, like they said, 50% of firms are re-engineering their business process. And that's amazing. And what it does, that means that it's going to open up new markets, new areas of service that they can provide. Or maybe someone can leverage technology, which is adding to their efficiency, which is bringing them value, and then charge more for that service and make a profit on what that technology is empowering them to do as a new service that they might not have provided before. And I can think immediately like energy analysis, daylighting, things that might have been more an outsourced, might be in-house, using technology that is giving them the ability to be the experts in that space now and to learn as they do. So I think it's fascinating what that can bring to a firm and expand their services. So in terms of the change we've had here, I think it parallels that thought where we've moved into consulting this year, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so could you talk about that relationship with the human in the loop that we have here? The idea of shepherding data through, and then how, I mean, our software is still there, our technology is still there as a backbone of operations. Um, can you relate in terms of what I'm saying, in terms of how people are reimagining or looking at new services in the market?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, what we've been observing really is the trend towards, um, you know, getting the data in, uh, that you need,
Mm,
and analyzing sort of exactly what are you looking for right now, right? You know, we may not be able to automate every step of the project, but what is that sort of key answer that you need now? And then going out and using our tools that we've built previously to sort of get you those answers quickly. So, as an example, let's say you need an energy analysis report and you're in the pre-construction phase.
mm,
So you might come to us, give us some project requirements, give us some of the basics of what you're looking for, give us a model, and we're sort of leveraging our technology powered consulting to then take that information in, ensure it kind of lines up with sort of the reports and things that we're able to provide,
mhm,
and then we can turn that around fairly quickly. much faster than the traditional consulting, because we are leveraging our existing software, the tools that we've built over the last 7 years or so, and also new tools like AI to sort of automate some of the more tedious tasks. I'll give a simple example, but typically a BIM file comes with many assemblies, right? Like for a large retail or office space, you might have hundreds of assemblies.
Hmm.
And so we're now sort of automatically importing those, assigning them to the correct performance values within our tool, and then generating a report based on that. And so we've really just been leveraging technology in key places to improve our internal efficiencies, which in turn, of course, lets us give you what you're looking for even more quickly. So I think that's where we've started to see this transformation, is leveraging our humans on the ground, our folks in the chair, to sort of use tools to consolidate, gather data, process it based on their expertise and their knowledge, and present it to you. I think the human touch is always going to be important, no matter how far AI advances. You're always going to need sort of that human touch to talk through
Yeah.
more complex components of what's being asked for and what's being delivered.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really key.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, we won't have time to hit on a few of the software or the technologies that I've seen out there. One for site analysis that I know I've seen mentioned is ANO, AINO. It's a current one. Our own Vitros platform and AI, providing you with zoning and other insights that we discussed today for free, online, and also then expanded services outside of that we can support. There was one called blueprints.ai that was mentioned in a previous session I had for residential planning, mostly for single family homes. Hierarch was like um, I'm not even sure. It's like doing area analysis and some kind of takeoffs as well. HIGHARC. Um, and then I saw some folks using something called Napkin, which was translating text into graphics. So quickly getting your ideas out there in a graphic format. I thought that was an interesting as well. So again, this is changing so quickly; it's hard to keep up with the names, the platforms, and everything else. So finding those that resonate for the task you're trying to automate, I think, is the biggest takeaway we can discuss. And we talked a lot about data, and we have a question here. We'll move on to questions now as we wrap up today. We had a question basically, how would you approach the bottleneck that most of the real world data needed to train ML model design files, digital terrain models, BIM, are distributed in different companies, and most of them are not willing to share that data? Even the company agreeing to support the machine learning model and train it with their data locally, what are the financial incentives? So what do you think about data and that question?
Yeah, that is a great question. It is a challenge, that hasn't completely been solved. I do think that uh, where we've seen the most value is sort of leveraging the open corpuses of data out there. Zoning being a great example, but
Yeah.
I do think that there are ways that we can leverage BIM models and BIM files to sort of get sort of pull out the trends and pull out the data that we need. As an example, we've had this daylight analysis within our tool for years now, and we don't actually leverage really much of the BIM specific data. We're essentially extracting the geometry surfaces that are required to run a daylight analysis. And so
Hmm.
oftentimes there's maybe different ways of looking at the data depending on what you need. So we sort of get the geometry we need, run our own analysis, and then sort of keep those two data sets associated with each other without necessarily keeping them completely in sync, right?
Mm.
And so training ML models, I think is becoming less of a task that software folks are trying to do, and more so what we're doing these days is sort of uh, leveraging things like in the I keep referencing OpenAI because that's what we're most familiar with here. But
Yeah.
we leverage this thing called the vector index, where you sort of feed it chunks of data
Hmm.
and then give it and have it answer based on those sets of data. How it gets down into the nitty gritty of BIM specifically.
Hmm.
That's something that we certainly want to explore more, and I think it is a challenge. Sort of handling private versus public data. But
Yeah.
I do think here at cove.tool we've found ways to sort of look at generic versions of models to sort of do the analysis that we need. And so I would imagine something similar to that would sort of get around this hurdle. Uh, you know, it depends on what you're trying to train the ML model to do, but
Right.
I think that could be a strategy as well.
Nice. All right. Well, we're right at time, and I just want to leave with a few thoughts as well in this space. Had the pleasure of Evelyn Lee joining me at the last conference I was at Aspire, with the AI in the Southeast. And she was discussing the opportunity for new products and new services. And she stated this one thing: those using it will surpass those who ignore it. And basically, studio environment design thinking is unique and critical, and we bring that to bear on every project as architects. So we need to hold on to that and think about how our services can expand. And so that's a very positive way of looking at what technology can empower for us. And it's really important for us to keep that optimism, I think, as these new technologies are moving so rapidly. We had one quick question about tools coming out so quickly and a resource you would recommend. There's a AI in the AEC blog that's out there on LinkedIn. You can look it up, as well as I mentioned before, Akil Hamant. He's got a Tell Me More podcast where he's tracking, and he has his own site as well, tracking some AI evolution in the AEC, which I've been following and I think is really terrific as well. So just keep your ear to the ground, folks, and keep paying attention to what's coming out. And we'll continue to keep watching as well and sharing the information we learn and having these discussions. We really appreciate you joining us today. Daniel, thanks for the conversation.